Begin. Hi, everybody. My name is Judy Mark. I'm the president of Disability Voices United, coming to you from Oakland, California today, where I'm in a hotel room on the 17th floor. Kaylee's in a hotel room on the 13th floor. And Tina, what floor are you on?
I'm also on the 13th floor.
Okay, she's on the 13th floor. We are here in Oakland getting ready for our big conference tomorrow here in Oakland. Who is coming to the conference tomorrow? Yay, raise your hand,
Hi,
give happy
Dan.
faces. We will see you all in person. We are very excited. It's going to be an absolutely amazing, amazing day. We have lots of great things in store for you. So, for those of you who want to come tomorrow and have not yet registered, I will tell you that we are not just sold out, we are oversold. We expect a fair number of, usually people don't show up, things happen in their lives. So, even if you're thinking, my friend is not showing up, so I can show up, no, we counted on your friend probably not showing up. So we are oversold, but at the same time, we are doing another very similar, actually much bigger conference on November 19th in Los Angeles. Um, because this one in Oakland sold out, I can tell you, you're going to need to buy your tickets soon. In the first like 2 or 3 days, we sold over 100 tickets, and we only are going to sell 360 tickets. Um, I can tell you too that several regional centers are offering, well, it's not the regional centers, it's their local volunteer advisory committees, their self-determination advisory committees. They are paying for a number of people from their regional center, their clients or their participants. Kaylee, can you remind everybody which regional centers those are?
Yes, we have North LA County, West Side Regional Center, Orange County, and Lanterman.
Okay, so if you are from any of those regional centers, get in touch with, my recommendation is to get in touch with the SDP manager. You can try your service coordinator, but not all service coordinators are going to know this. So I would get in touch with the SDP manager, tell them that you want the special secret code that they have to register, and you will not have to pay either out of your own pocket or from your SDP spending plan because of that. So please register soon. The registration link was put into the chat, um, and um, and I think that's all the announcements, right, Kaylee?
Think outside the box.
Oh, geez. Okay, we are having a Think Outside the Box 2 weeks from today. So remember, we now only have SDP Connects once a month, and the other time of the month, the other Wednesday of the month, we are doing a Think Outside the Box training, where we're actually taking people step by step, and we're going through every aspect of the SDP. We started earlier this year by talking about transition supports. We did a session on person-centered planning, on developing the individual budget, and now we just did last month the spending plan. And there was so much to talk about that we decided to split it into two sessions. So it will be part two of the spending plan in 2 weeks from today, same time, as at the same time, 4:30 to 6, but a different registration link. So, somebody's asking the Think Outside the Box meetings are virtual. Our conferences are actually in person. So, the conference tomorrow in Oakland is in person, and the conference in November is in person in Los Angeles. But our Think Outside the Box and SDP Connects are all virtual, so it's easy for you to get there. All right. So we have a lot to get through today. I have to tell you before we start presenting the slides that I found it to be a very cathartic experience to create these slides for you. Cathartic, in case you don't know what that means, is it's like lets my emotions out because I have been very, very concerned at the way that the self-determination program is currently working. are not working in many places, and wanted to give folks a little bit of the history first to tell you how we got to this point where things are so dysfunctional. And then we will go into more details about how dysfunctional things are right now. But how life changed. Let's just start with how completely life changing the self-determination program is. So despite all of these issues that many people are facing, it is still remains very life changing. And if you come to our conference, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about that. All right, so let's start to share both the English side. Let's share the Spanish slides first, and then we'll share the English slides. You all can go to the top of your screen once the slides are shared, and you can select whether you want the English slides or the Spanish slides. So that was the Spanish slides. Now we have the English slides. Great. Oh, I also forgot to mention that everybody should choose a language. You go down to the bottom of your screen, pick on the globe, and choose English, Spanish, or Korean. For those who are English speakers, you still need to pick a slide. I mean, pick a language, sorry. And you need to make sure that, because we may have questions in Spanish and you're going to want to hear the simultaneous interpretation. Do we have the Spanish slides showing right now? Because I'm not seeing them at the top of my screen for some weird reason.
Yeah, I don't see them either, Judy.
I have the meeting, I have the English slides. Michaela, do you have the slides?
I could stop sharing so she could share first.
Okay.
Yeah, I shared them first and I saw them pop up. So let's see if
Yeah,
it works
now
this
they've
time.
disappeared. Let's see.
Do we have the multi-share on or is it kicking me off when Kaylee
I
starts?
see the word Spanish slides on the screen, but then it disappears.
Yeah, that's just what I changed my name to. So let me try again and we'll see if it kicks me off when Kaylee comes on.
I fixed it, don't worry.
Okay, cool.
There you go.
Yay!
Okay.
Fabuloso. Awesome staff that we have here at DBU. Okay, so and we're going to put all these slides in the chat, everybody, so you will get to download them and take them home with you. All right, so Tina and I are going to be presenting these slides. So go ahead to the next slide, please, everybody. Tina, why don't you begin by talking about the long ago history?
Okay, the pilot project began back in 1998, and I entered it in 2001. Before it was a law, there weren't as many rules as there are now. We didn't have to worry about matching federal funds or making sure things were federally fundable because we only had to worry about the state. So things were easier. And one of the things they did a better job at doing back in the pilot was helping us to understand our responsibilities. Because really they're entrusting us with this amount of money and expecting us to use it appropriately. And they were better at helping us understand that during the pilot project. Is there anything you want to add that I forgot?
Yeah, I mean, the people who got selected, first of all, you should know that there was only 200 people in the pilot project. So it was a very small group. There was such a sense of commitment to making sure that the pilot project was successful. There were a lot of evaluations showing how incredibly transformative it was, but mostly it showed that people were really happy. People became very happy when they got choice and control of their services. So the problem is that the way the pilot was supposed to work is that it was created as a 5-year pilot, and at the end of the 5 years, the Department of Developmental Services was required to do a study, kind of a report on how things went, deliver that to the legislature, which it did in 2002, and then based on that, it was supposed to go statewide at that point. But that never happened. The evaluation still exists. I can give you a copy at some point. It's really an incredible, like probably 100 pages showing how incredible the incredible lives that the 200 people led who were in the pilot. But it didn't become a pilot. So let's go to the next slide. I mean, it didn't become a statewide law.
We fought for a long time to make it
Yes.
statewide.
So many of us fought for a long time to take the self-determination program statewide. There were attempts by union members to try to do it, but this there was a sort of a perfect, we called ourselves the dream team, who came together in 2013 to take this program statewide. I see Connie and Harvey Lapin here, who are part of the dream team. We had my husband, who was part of it, Alan Ehrenbaum. We had April Lopez from Regional Center of Orange County and her husband. We had the amazing Catherine Blakemore, who at the time was the executive director of Disability Rights California. And nobody thought we could do it. The regional centers opposed it, but we got it passed in our first try. And it was one of the great days of our lives. In the original law, it said that the program cannot go into effect until there is a waiver. So a waiver is like a contract with the federal government to draw down federal matching funds for the services. So we had to have this waiver written. There was a requirement that DDS submit the application for the waiver by December of 2014. You should know that the law passed in 2013. And so that we gave them a bit over a year to do it. And they didn't get it done. They absolutely did not get it done. And in fact, the waiver did not get approved until 2018. It was not because the federal government didn't want to approve it, but because DDS didn't get their act together to get it written in time. So finally, on June 5th, 2018, I will never forget, I was on vacation. I was on a boat on an island in Panama, and I got somehow a text or something saying, waivers approved, the program gets started. Excellent. And so it was supposed to start in June 2018, but I'll tell you, no one went into the program for at least a year after that. Even though we had all these years where there was this committee meeting, we were setting things up, we were all working together. It was the regional centers, this is before DVU truly existed, so it was the precursor to DVU. It was all the people who got the law passed, Disability Rights California, State Council, everybody was part. We were all working together, and no one did anything with all the DDS did not take any of our advice. And when the waiver finally got approved in 2018, nothing happened. Nothing happened. And so it took about a year for DDS to issue a set of directives, which allowed the first participants to enter sometime in mid-2019. But even the rules that they put into place, which were primarily around the criminal background checks that staff need to have, they weren't allowed anything around anything else. They were very limited. They didn't really give very much advice or counsel to the regional centers. So what ended up happening is the regional centers started making up their own rules, because with the absence of guidance, they're going to make up their own rules all the time. However, even with their own rules, the early participants, the people who went in 2019, 2020, 2021, of which my son was one of them, we had a lot more freedom because there were no rules existing. Some people took advantage of the fact that there were not a lot of rules in a way that was not helpful to the program. They were purchasing items, they were attempting to put like in-ground pools in their backyard and doing some things that were clearly not the intention of the program. And so therefore things got kind of out of control. And instead of DDS saying, let's issue a bunch of rules so people know what they can and cannot buy, they just, it took them years and years to do it. And so the other thing that was so important is that there was a 3-year phase-in period. It's not the pilot. People often call that the pilot. It's not the pilot. The pilot was the program that Tina was in that started in 1998 up until 2018.
We were the people who proved that it could be done, that it was
Exactly.
possible.
This, the until from 2018 to 2021, that is called the phase-in period. There was a maximum of 2,500 people, and it was a lottery. People were got in by lottery, and there was a requirement to keep it racially diverse. So it's like, um, a lottery of, so if the state is 42% Latino, then the intention was that of the lottery picks, 42% of the lottery picks should be Latino. The problem is that they pick lots of people join the lottery who were not prepared to go into the program. So by the time 2021 came and the phase-in period ended, only 500 people had entered the program instead of 2,500. And I'm giving you all this history because many of you were not around during this time and you didn't know why we are in the situation we're in right now. None of the people who are at DDS today were around during that time either. So I don't think anybody from DDS is here, but I hope that they remember how we got to this point. Okay, next slide. So in June of 2021, enrollment became open to anyone. You didn't have to be part of the pilot. You didn't have to be part of the phase-in. You just were, anybody could do it if you were eligible. And the eligibility was very, very broad. It's anyone who is what's called Land Term and Act eligible, meaning you're not an early start. So you're not a 0 through 3-year-old in early start. You're over 3, you're part of the regular regional center system, and you are living in an environment where you can have choice and control or intend to leave that environment. So, for example, if you were living in an institutional setting like an intermediate care facility, you could use the self-determination program to get out of the ICF, but you cannot have self-determination living there.
Important to note that they did some like major changes to the rules without really giving us very much warning to those of us that were in the program during that time, that kind of messed things up and made some people not want to be in the program because like back then you could request special clothing if you were trying to get a job, and you could get things paid for that they suddenly turn around and say, well, no, you can't get that special clothing anymore. We're not going to help you, and there were people who had jobs lined up that didn't get to start their jobs because they couldn't get the clothing that they needed. And there were like some really messed up things that happened.
Right. So the fact that only 500 people had entered in that 3-year period means that DDS did not get a chance to get lessons learned or to figure out where the problems were. And so the problems that existed in the first 3 years continued on after June 2021. And it went from 500 people being in the program to 2 or 3,000 of them within a year. And we called it the Wild Wild West because there were kind of no rules and people were trying to get away with stuff that they probably shouldn't have, but there was no rule against it. So you can't really condemn them.
If you don't give people parameters, you don't give them guidelines, then they don't even know what to ask for. And then you tell them, well, dream big, think big, and they do. And then you turn around and tell them if it wasn't the right thing, that's your fault because you didn't set the parameters and DDS didn't set the parameters. So if we screwed up, it's their fault because they didn't give us any guidelines.
Exactly. The other thing you should know is that sometimes DDS would issue a directive and then take it
Change
back.
your mind.
Yeah, they would take it back like 3 or 4 months later. So there was so much confusion around the rules of this time. And the thing that was most critical is that even to this day, DDS has never set timelines for regional centers in order, the timeline of how soon do they have to agree with you on a budget, how fast Do they have to approve a spending plan change? Like timelines do not exist.
They
You'll
didn't give
see,
us timelines either. They didn't say you need to turn in your renewal budget, X months in advance. They didn't tell us that stuff either. So everybody's just treading water, hoping,
Mhm.
for the
Right.
past.
I just noticed in the chat that Faith had asked which regional centers did the pilot program start in. It was only 5. It was Kern Regional Center was the big one. They had an executive director who was also the dad of a regional center client, Mike Clark. And so that was the really, really big pilot.
I was
Um,
in Curtin.
yeah, but there was also East Los Angeles Regional Center had a pretty nice sized pilot. San Diego Regional Center had a big group, and then they all dropped out. So by the time the program went statewide, they only had like 3 people left. Tri-Counties Regional Center was another pilot regional center. They had 20 people in the pilot when the program went statewide, except that all 19 out of 20 of them lived in an intermediate care facility. I am not kidding you. So they were ineligible to participate in the statewide program. I do not know how they were participating in the pilot project and living in an intermediate care facility, but so really there were very few pilot participants. Oh, and San Diego was, yeah, no, San Diego, Kern, East Los Angeles, Tri-Counties, and oh, Redwood Coast. Redwood Coast was the 5th one. They also had very few left by the time we went statewide. Um, so let's go to the next slide now. So Tina, this is your slide.
Oh yeah. Last year DDS was supposed to create an IF certification. It didn't happen. It wasn't like they tried, but it didn't. They did a really bad job of choosing the people to do it. They were also supposed to create FMS certification. Hasn't happened. DDS promised to break down barriers, told us to get things put in to the master plan, and now they're ignoring it. So, like, the barriers didn't get better. DDS expressed major concerns about SDP participants and families, and the governor vetoed our SDP legislation, told us to put it in the master plan, and now they're ignoring the master plan like it never happened. We poured our hearts, our souls, and our time in the master plan, and I'm really upset that they've just dropped it like it didn't matter. It mattered to me. It mattered to those of us that did it. And it's not fair.
Yeah. So, if anybody wants to ask, like, where is DDS with the IF certification? I would say nowhere. They hired a company that they shouldn't have hired, who knew nothing about the self-determination program, but
They didn't even have any idea. Like, it wasn't just that they knew nothing. They expected us to teach them.
yeah,
Like, they wanted us to write it and them get the credit for it. It was crazy. It was insane.
yeah. The FMS certification, I believe, is going a bit better. They did hire a real national expert on financial management services, but I don't know when they're going to have that ready either. So, the concern though that I have is that even though I feel like we continually get let down by DDS in ensuring that things are going well or even setting rules so they don't go bad, and they're not doing that, DDS, they're not going to say it out loud, but DDS really believes that the problem with the SDP is us. It is family members first and then self-advocates as well. And so the reason why I felt it was really important to do this this SDP Connect today was I'm going to tell you all the things that DDS is feeling, is thinking, but they're not able to say it out loud. And we have to really join together to ensure that we save the program. It's also going to be some of us taking responsibilities, a better responsibility for the program, but at the same time, it's also going to be, really pressuring DDS to do better.
They set us up to fail like they didn't want us to make it.
Yeah,
I don't think that's fair.
I think a lot of people agree with that. Okay, next slide, please. So this year, this is the year that a lot of changes are starting. So I've already done a couple of SDP Connects about this, but I'm going to say it again in case some of you weren't there. So in May, the governor puts out what's called his revised budget, or the May revise in short, what they call it, which contained reforms to the self-determination program in order to sustain the program. That's the term that they used. They are concerned, they are very concerned that the program is not sustainable for a range of reasons, which I'll go over. DVU, along with a bunch of folks here, including people from Disability Rights California and some of the local volunteer advisory committees, pushed back on some of the language that was in the May revise, and we won some changes, but we didn't win all the changes. And we'll go over some of the changes that we're expecting over the next year or so. But we are expecting that there are going to be really significant restrictions coming to the self-determination program very soon. And there has been no commitment by DDS to break down the barriers. And my message to DDS, and I want all of you to join me in this messaging, is we agree that the program needs to be sustained, that we as participants and family members need to take responsibility and to not commit Medicaid fraud, which some people have tried. We know there has to be good responsibility, but at the same time, you cannot put more restrictions on us without actually breaking down some of the barriers that have existed since 2018. So let's go to the next slide. So here's what we're expecting to happen in the near future. Like, don't put me, like, I can't tell you exactly the date that this is going to happen, because nothing happens within a normal timeline when you're dealing with the state of California's departments. They do not work quickly, but this is what we expect to be happening. There was language in the state budget that actually ultimately passed on that became law on July 1st, which has a change to the way that individual budgets are going to be developed for new participants. So those of you who are already in the SDP, this does not apply to you, although there will be other things that apply to you. But for new participants, you have to look at the effectiveness and the cost effectiveness of the services that make up the budget. So these are the services that you would have been getting in the traditional system. So let's say supported living that you would be getting in the traditional system. Regional centers are supposed to be saying, is that an effective service for that individual? And the cost effectiveness is basically defined as the least expensive option that would still provide the same level of service and quality. So they're not saying that it's always the cheapest, but it is the type of, let's say for me, it's easy to compare things that you would purchase. Like, let's say it's adult diapers. You may say, we need this quality of adult diapers. We can get it for this price on Amazon and much less expensive if we buy it through Costco.com. So the requirement would be buy it through Costco.com, but we're only talking about the budget here. So it would be whatever it costs at Costco would be the amount of money that goes into your budget. The other change is that it is not the total amount of expenditures in the last 12 months. It is now the total amount of services that were put into your IPP, whether they were used or not. So if you had an IPP that offered you 80 hours of respite in a month, but you could never find a respite provider and you didn't use any of those hours, you would still get the funds that those 80 hours made up into your budget. The other big change is that you cannot claim unmet need anymore unless you have no or low purchase of services. So the amount of money that has been spent on you is either you've had no services provided or a very small amount of services. DDS has not yet defined what small amount means. And so we're waiting on that information. But you can't come in and say, well, the traditional system just hasn't been working for me because I'm not the kind of person that would ever go to a congregate day program, or I'm not the kind of person that would want to be in a day activity program. And so therefore I've been sitting at home all this time. So I've had unmet need. You can't claim that anymore. So how are you going to get money in your budget is through the IPP process. And the IPPs are really, really, really problematic. I don't know anyone who has told me they've had an amazing IPP this year. There was a brand new IPP template. And by the way, we already had DDS talk about the IPP template believe in April, and they're coming back in October at our next SDP Connect again, because there were probably 50 questions left and they ran out of time. And so we were having DDS back to talk about it. It was actually a really great conversation. It was more about the ideal of what the IPP should be and not actually what the reality of the IPP is. So it's all about making sure that all of your needs are recorded in the IPP, and it also means that you have to set very, very specific kinds of desired outcomes, is what they call goals now. And you have to be very, very focused and read over your IPP afterwards to make sure that they captured everything that you wanted. Tina, did you want to throw in anything here?
Yes, it is okay to refuse to sign your IPP until you have read it. They will try to pressure you to sign it before they leave. Say no. Tell them you want to see your IPP. You want to read your IPP before you sign your IPP.
It's really important. I can tell you, Tina's IPP, when she read it, was about a small boy who had his father helping him in the
Brush his teeth.
shower. Yes. And my son's IPP, while it was not that inaccurate, it was actually very accurate. It has one of his desired outcomes as creating a movie where he plays Popeye and he has all these other people and Popeye characters, which is I don't even remember us even talking about that, but even if we did, that is not an appropriate desired outcome in an IPP.
It would be
might,
fine in a person-centered plan,
right.
but not in an IPP.
It has nothing to do with this disability. All right, next slide. All right, more changes coming in the near future. I can't tell you the date, but probably in the next year or something. So changes to budget development for renewing participants. So if you're in your year 2, 3, or 4, DDS calls that a renewal of your budget. I know that some independent facilitators out there call that a rollover into your next year, but I call it a renewal because that's what DDS calls it, and I want to attract the same language.
Well, and if you use the term rollover, that's a little bit confusing because the money doesn't roll over.
Correct. So renewal is the correct term. And so for those of you who might be independent facilitators out there, I encourage you to use the term renewal.
Renewal.
So you are going to be stuck with the exact same budget that you've had in previous years unless you can say that the participant has a change in circumstances, needs, or resources.
Which
So,
works in both directions, up and down.
excellent point. So let's give some examples of what those are. So a change in circumstances is something like leaving high school and or moving out of the house. Obviously, there's going to be a need for additional resources for the individual, or certainly different kinds of funding for services. So that's a circumstance where the person's life has changed. An example of a change in needs are things like a person may have an increased challenge with behaviors, or maybe their health they're really struggling with their health. And so that might require an increase in funding because that person needs a lot more support at that time. It also could mean a decrease. And that's where the responsibility piece comes in, everybody. Um, I I can give you an example of my own son. When my son was young, when he was 9, 10, 11 years old, he struggled a lot with emotional regulation and he had a lot of challenging behaviors. At a certain point, we were provided by our regional center 40 hours a week of behavioral therapy. This is before insurance companies were required to pay for it. He had 40 hours a week of behavioral therapy and a highly paid behavioral respite aid for another 40 hours a week. Um, Within about 6 months, my son started improving like tremendously, and his behaviors really lessened to the point where he did not need 2-on-1. He did not need that level of 40 hours a week anymore. And so we agreed to reduce the level of services. If he were in the SDP, it would mean that his budget would decrease. And folks, you should accept that. Accept that as a win, because we're holding taxpayer dollars here. These are government funds, and that money doesn't belong to you, and it doesn't mean that you get to keep it for the rest of your life. If things get better, if with the individual, with the participant, that is a great thing. And just agree to reduce services. The reason why people don't agree to it is because they don't trust the regional center. Because what if something happens, your health gets worse again, the behavior challenges get higher, and you're going to need to go to your regional center urgently to increase your budget so that you can hire people that you need. And almost no one I know trusts that their regional center is going to do that in an urgent way. And so we have to start accepting responsibility. And then if that happens, when those needs rise again, um, you know, you have to say, listen, we accepted this, and now look at the change that's happened. And we trusted you, and now you don't deserve our trust. So we have to at least meet people halfway. Then a change in an example of a change in resources is that people need to use generic resources first. Regional centers are the payer of last resort. So let's say you're currently authorized for 60 hours a month of IHSS, but now you have a social worker who's now authorized you for 200 hours of IHSS. It's not like the regional center is going to say, oh, well, that's fine. You can continue to get your 200 hours of IHSS and we're going to keep your budget at the same level. They're not going to do that. They're going to lower your budget because IHSS is supposed to take over those extra hours that you've been approved for. It's the same thing where if IHSS sometimes says, no, you don't need protective supervision anymore, we're lowering your hours. The regional center, you make the regional center aware of that, and then they are supposed to increase your budget to make up for those hours that IHSS is not covering. Did you want to add anything, Tina?
Just it's important to be honest with your worker. I'll give you when I say your worker, I mean your IHSS IHSS worker as well as your regional center worker, because they all work together to provide you with your services. And if you're not being honest with them, they can't help you get what you need. And people can feel when you're not being honest with them. They like to work with you if they feel like you're honest. So I'll give an example. I got really, really sick last January. And I was sick enough that I needed nursing care in my home and I needed additional assistance from my caregivers. I called my IHSS worker immediately. They increased my hours. I also called my regional center worker and gave her all the information. We knew that it was a temporary situation. It was not going to be long term. I just had to get better. And once I got better, things would go back to normal. So the regional center understood that I was going to need additional help for a little while. And IHSS understood that I was going to need additional help for a little while. So my IHSS increased, and my regional center said, we understand it's temporary. And because you've given us all of the information and told us exactly what's happening, we're not going to let it affect your budget. We're going to leave your budget the same, and we're going to play it by ear. And when your budget has too much money next year, we're not going to take it away from you. So, and I was honest, and I told them when I got better and we got things changed, and now my budget has lots of extra money in it, and they're not going to penalize me for it because they understand I got 5 hours a week extra IHSS for months on end. So if you're honest with them, they work with you. If you're not honest with them and they find out, you're going to get in trouble. They're going to take stuff away from you.
Really great points. And I see that there's a hand raised, and I just want to let everybody know that we are going to take questions at the end of this presentation. We don't have too many more slides to go. Maria, you keep your hand up and we'll call on you first. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, also in the near future, we are anticipating this new provision of law to take effect. Something that I'm really, 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 really upset about. So previously, when people wanted to change their spending plan, at least according to law, the only thing you needed regional centers approval for is to take money from one category to another. And for those of you who are really new to the SDP, you may not understand the difference between service codes and categories. Please go to our Think Outside the Box, where we're going to be talking about that in a couple weeks. But now, if you even transfer $5 from one service code to another, it requires approval of the regional center. Approval, which is a much more significant word, because it used to be that it just required certification or review of the regional center, and now it requires approval. And what DDS is saying is, well, that's the way it was working anyway, which was partially true at some regional centers. It was not working that way at my regional center, at Westside Regional Center. We could make changes between service codes seamlessly. And now we have to go to the regional center. And we know that the regional centers take forever to approve even a small change. And I'm now going to throw it to Tina. And if you don't mind telling the example of what you're going through right now with this small change that you're doing.
Okay. My plan renewal comes up in the very near future, and we were trying to change the way we did things slightly. And we wanted to start it now instead of waiting till renewal. We wanted to give my staff 50 cents more an hour. Just 50 cents. And there's plenty of money in my budget to do that. And the FMS said, no, you have to go redo your spending plan. So this was at the end of July. We're still working on getting it done. And it was supposed to start on the 1st of September. But there was so many things that went wrong. It's ridiculous. There was a problem with the template. So when we turned in the spending plan, then the numbers weren't right. Even though we put the numbers in right, it didn't add it up together right. And that that caused a 3-week delay because they kept shooting it back to us, telling us to do the math right. We did the math right the first time, so we don't understand why it's not coming out. Well, finally, the CAC actually literally sat down and did the math herself and had the same problem. She knows she put the numbers in right. It didn't come out right. So the problem wasn't us to begin with. So I agreed to let it go with it being off. It was only off like $1.50 or something. And I'm like, I don't care. I'll lose $1.50 out of my budget if it makes it work. So they finally put it through. I signed it, it went through, but they still haven't given the signed spending plan to my FMS. So my staff still don't have their raises. And like, what do you do about that?
Yeah.
Like, nothing's gonna happen at the FMS if the regional center drops the ball.
Yeah.
Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, I was actually talking about the little wage increase you wanted to give to your staff and that
Yeah,
you're
that's
waiting.
what I was talking about, is trying to give a
Oh,
50 cent,
that's what you were saying
it's
to
a
me. Yeah.
50 cent raise. It's just a 50 cent raise. It's not like
Yeah.
anything huge, and I have the money to do it, so it shouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah.
But the FMS wanted a whole spending plan change and everything. When we're
Yeah.
not even moving money between categories, we're just giving a 50 cent raise.
Yeah, the other big thing is that DDS is going to implement this new, well, they've already implemented it. It is already required that regional centers must approve transferring even $1 from one service code to the other. But what DDS did not do is create a timeline for regional centers by which they have to
Yeah.
do that.
Oh,
Mhm.
there's another big thing that's happening is regional centers and FMSs are trying to get everybody to put things in their spending plan that we aren't supposed to have to put in there. They want you to list every single employee and every single provider in your spending plan. They're not supposed to even do that. I refused. We refused. I put in only categories for my staff because I have 3 staff categories. I have a full-time category, I have an administrative assistant category, and I have everybody else category. So we did the category thing, and the only person whose name they got was the name of my IF and the name of my administrative assistant. The rest of it, I refused. So you can refuse because it's ridiculous that they're asking us for things that aren't required by law.
All right. All right, let's go
If
to
you,
the
if
next
you
slide.
do change, if you do have a change, if you lose a staff person, you have to redo your spending plan to get the FMS to pay them. So that creates health safety issues. Because if I can't hire my staff without taking 3 months to do a spending plan, which it's already taken like a month and a half, and I still have my spending plan done.
Yeah.
So like that's if I was trying to hire a new person and I had to do a spending plan because I changed the name of a staff person, like that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Ridiculous is a word we use a lot. Okay, let's go to next slide, please. All right, so now let's look to what's happening in the longer term future. So by August, which is not even that long from now, it's less than a year. By August 1st, DDS is required to create a new definition for cost effectiveness. It's actually a new definition for the entire system, including the traditional system, but it will also be applied to the self-determination program, both in the development of the budget and in the spending plan. DDS is required to consult with a range of organizations, such as their lived experience advisory group that Tina sits on, and advocates, family members, and many others. So I can't really tell you what they're trying to do, but they're trying to thread a very difficult needle to say, yes, you people in the SDP, you need to use the cheapest one, without actually saying what that means. And so I foresee some real concerns coming out of the development of this definition. And obviously, we will stay in touch with the community as it moves forward. All of you know who come to our SDP Connects that we are very, very open and public with the advocacy that we do. We include you, we like to hear from you, and we often, when I'm told things, I often include your stories in the advocacy that we do. All right, next slide, please. So in even the longer term future, by March, by the longer term future actually comes the things that we need now. And so the fact that they pushed the date, the DDS pushed the date all the way back to March 1st of 2027, when it's actually the things that will help us, is very frustrating. So remember that, oh, Tina, why don't you, if you're going to, here, I'm going to mute you, Tina. So remember that all of these new rules and restrictions are going to go into effect very soon, but the things that we want are not going to go into effect until March 1st, 2027. And those things include DDS, reducing the barriers to participation and improving equity in enrollment. So if folks have not seen the latest data, you'll see that Latinos and African Americans are very, very underrepresented in the self-determination program. Latinos are the majority race and ethnicity in the state of California, and they only have about 20 or 22% of the enrollees in the self-determination program. African Americans also very underrepresented by about 40%. Of course, whites are significantly overrepresented, and Asians are about on par with where they should be, maybe slightly over-enrolled. So they are supposed to be doing something about this. I have no idea what that is that they're going to do, but they're supposed to be doing something about it. The other thing they're supposed to do is create standardized processes, procedures, and note timelines. We got that in the law for enrollment. So that means if you're brand new to the SDP, they are going to create timelines for the regional center by which they have to respond to the individual and their family. Also for budgets, spending plans. So that means if you put in a request to change your spending plan, the regional center is going to be required to do it in a certain amount of days. Remember, though, that they've already put into effect the need for us to get approval from our regional center for even $1 changed between a service code, and yet they haven't put these timelines into effect. So I'm going to say this over and over again, but the point I'm trying to make here is that barriers are not only not being reduced that existed previously, but they're putting up new barriers in our way. And so we have to really work together in one voice to say that these that DDS, they just have to do it by March 1st. They don't have to wait. They could do it tomorrow. But they do, by the way, have to get community input by the same groups of folks that were consulted for the new definition of cost effectiveness. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So these were the really cathartic slides that I made because I am just honestly feeling very discouraged right now. And so that's why we decided to do this session today. These are the concerns I believe DDS has, but they're not saying explicitly. They're not saying it clearly, okay? So number one, they have grave concerns over the increasing budgets because the program in its original law is supposed to be cost neutral in the aggregate. And I'll explain that. It doesn't mean that every person has to have the same budget that they had in the traditional system that they have now in the SDP. It means that over the state, on average, it's about the same. And that is not the case. People are getting budgets that are significantly higher than the services they were receiving in the traditional system. I know all of you are thinking, well, there's reasons for that because people were being underserved in the traditional system. They don't care. This is what their concerns are. I know this, but they are not talking about it publicly. They are also very concerned about the things that people are buying, not the staffing, not that you are having staff or you're hiring a karate coach, or they're talking about the stuff that people are buying, and that some of the stuff is overly expensive and not related to the person's disability. So we're talking about things like buying a Peloton bike with the family plan as opposed to joining a gym that has a recumbent bike that you can use, which is significantly cheaper, or people joining a country club that is incredibly expensive so that you can take golf lessons instead of taking golf lessons at your local community park. So these are the things that they are concerned about. By the way, I am also concerned about these things. Tina is also concerned about these things. Rick Wood, who is the chair of the statewide self-determination advisory committee, is also very concerned about this. So I want people to stop buying lots of stuff. This is about people living in the community, reaching their hopes and dreams, getting a job if they can or if they want, living a life, joining their church, getting friends, getting married, whatever they want to do. That's what the SDP is about. It is not about buying stuff unless
So
that stuff relates to your disability.
it's also not about getting the largest budget you can possibly get. And a lot of people like lose focus on that. It's not about getting the biggest possible budget. It's about getting what your needs met.
Right.
It's not about, oh, I can get a bigger budget than that person has. It's not about, and that's one of the things that bothers me is I see IFs advertising that they'll get you a huge budget. It's not about getting the biggest budget. It's about getting your needs met and making sure everybody else in the program can also get their needs met. It's a finite amount of money that's set aside for the self-determination program, and we all have to share it. So if you're out there trying to get everything and not remembering that it's for everyone, if the money's for all of us, then you're not being responsible.
Right. The other big concern that they have is that parents are taking most of the spending plan funds. So you should know DDS sees everybody's spending plans. They review everybody's spending plans. And that is the reason why lots of FMSs and regional centers are requiring names to be put on spending plans. Because if they then see that every name of a staff member has the same last name as the SDP participant, they are realizing that this is a problem. And let me tell you why this is a problem. And I'm going to give an example. Is that I'm not saying it's wrong for parents to be paid to support their adult children. They're not allowed to support minor children, but to support their adult children, I think it is a good thing. It just can't be the only thing because parents are not going to live forever. And if the individual's life is basically surrounded by just the parents, that's not good. But it's also not good because sometimes parents do not have all the skill sets that are needed. And also, I can tell you this is my own son, that my son tries to get away with things with me, just like any person without a disability. The child tries to get away with things with their parents that they wouldn't be with people who are not their family members. And so I have a friend whose son has really significant challenging behaviors, and it's the family was the entire group of people that are in the spending plan, and the family was constantly in crisis. It was a daily set of crises. And now I'm helping the family. I'm not an IF and I don't get paid anything, but I'm helping the family see that this is not a good thing. And they are now hiring staff. They have a very nice budget to do this. They're hiring staff. They're hiring a behavioral agency. They're creating a whole plan, and everybody's going to get training to follow that plan. And I believe it hasn't all gone into effect yet, but I believe that things are going to improve very, very quickly for this individual because they're getting in the right kinds of supports.
And there's one other thing that we sometimes lose sight of, and that is not the whole thing, but a large part of the reason for creating the SDP is getting us back into the community. Getting us back into the community means being part of the community. One of the things that I like best about the SDP is that I am no longer a burden. I'm a benefit. I hire people in my community. I provide jobs for people. And that's important. We have to remember that. It's becoming again a part of the community. It can give you self-esteem where you didn't have it before.
Right. Excellent points. All right, let's go to the next slide because I'm realizing we're not leaving a huge amount of time for questions and comments.
Oops.
Okay, so these are concerns that we have at Disability Voices United that at least at this point, DDS has not said that they share with us. Number one always is that the participants have a lack of authority, which is authority is it's freedom and authority. Those are the two main principles of self-determination. And if regional centers are saying there needs to be a direct line between what's in the traditional system and the services you're getting, or if that, they're trying to micromanage us, then we have lost authority. So that is a huge one. Number two, FMSs are not paying providers in a timely way. We especially community-based providers like your local karate studio, if they're if they're not getting paid in a timely way, they're not going to take disabled clients, and that is really bad. Number three, shadow rules being created by FMSs and regional centers. As I said, in the absence of rules coming from the state, they're going to make it up. And FMSs are doing this because they want to make sure they get paid. And regional centers are doing this because they often want to control us. There's also, we are hearing this from several regional centers that you are getting respite as part of your budget. And so therefore you have to put respite in your SDP spending plan. That is not true. There is absolutely nothing in law or directive that states that. And regional centers are being allowed to do this, and DDS is allowing them to do this. They are backing them up, and it is outrageous to me. Requiring every provider's name on spending plans. Tina just mentioned this. Very problematic. And then the IPPs not being done well. Tina also talked about this. So let's go to the next slide so we have time to get to questions. Also, concerns that they don't seem to share with us or care about. These delays, we've been talking about it. The fact that it's taken 90 days to get a small spending plan change approved. The fact that it's now taking, I'm hearing 6 weeks for DDS to do a criminal background check. Ridiculous. When LiveScan gets it done in 48 hours. The lack of response from FMSs where people call and call and call certain FMSs and not get a return phone call. Setting up people in the self-determination program to live at much higher standards for HCBS compliance. So HCBS stands for Home and Community-Based Services. The requirement is that they all allow full access to the community. Apparently, every single traditional program is approved, even though we know most of them are segregated. So many of them are segregated. and they're all approved, but somehow the local karate studio has to fill out an HCBS form. Like if I own that studio and it's just one student coming in, I'm not filling out that form. You can go somewhere else. Gaps in services at renewal time. Very, very problematic. People are starting 6 months before. Like, how do you start a renewal 6 months? You're only halfway through your year, and you are finding out, like, literally the day before the renewal begins, that they want you to change like some little small thing, like Tina was providing as an example. It's ridiculous. And I mentioned the delays in background checks. Final slide then. And I'm rushing through these, but you can get copies of these slides in the chat. Qualifications of providers being stricter than in the traditional system. Where I just heard recently of someone who has been in the traditional system using a psychiatrist for years, and now all of a sudden they're not qualified to do this work, the same work they were doing in the traditional system, doing the exact same thing in the SDP. Concerns about the traditional system. So this is one of my little pet peeves, that they're talking about all the fraud and abuse happening in the SDP, but no one is talking about the fraud and abuse that exists in the traditional system. It is so widespread, and 99% of people with developmental disabilities in the state of California are in the traditional system, yet we hear nothing about all the fraud, the abuse, the people dying on the watch of these traditional providers. We hear nothing about that. Requiring more assessments. They're requiring some people to get more assessments than they are required to do in the traditional system. And then also the final big problem is that they're asking for these extreme insurance requirements for independent facilitators, so that nobody wants to be an independent facilitator. In the traditional, meaning those people who are helping you transition in for the first time. So that's I'm sorry that I'm on a rant. Tina is also on a rant. We're very concerned, and we're about to head into a conference, a big conference tomorrow in Oakland, where DDS is going to be out in force at our conference. And so for those of you who are coming, we hope that you'll speak to all of these same concerns. So you can stop sharing the screen. Thank you to our wonderful staff. We see a lot of hands up, and I'm going to.
There are 5 hands raised.
Yes. So why don't you get started with those, and I'm going to start looking through the chat.
Maria Teresa. Can I mute? Maria Teresa.
¿Sí me escuchan?
Yes, we can hear you.
Mi más grande preocupación es no solamente lo del fraude, sino la tardanza en la transición y también en la tardanza cuando te hacen que te hagas vendor para que si no estás en autodeterminación te paguen tus facturas. A veces tardan hasta 8 meses en hacerlo. Quisiera saber si ustedes están tomando alguna acción para acelerar esto. Gracias.
We're trying. We at DVU meet with DDS every 2 weeks about the self-determination program. I meet once a month with the DDS director. We got all kinds of great recommendations in the master plan on developmental services to improve the SDP. We are having big conferences where we've invited DDS to come. We have not yet been successful. And so we need all of you to really be united with us on this. You don't have to say, DVU told me to say this. In fact, that would make it a lot worse. You should say, independently, everybody needs to be putting pressure. And that means not just putting pressure on DDS, but call the governor's office, because he's responsible for DDS. Call your local state legislators. Tell them how frustrated you are with the state agency. These are additional ways that you can apply pressure. Let's take the next hand, Tina.
Melissa.
Hi, 2 things. I think it was on your slide 7 about the renewal for budgets, and I'm wondering where rate changes go in there, and I'm seeing different regional centers do different things. And then Also, and then the second thing on your concerns, I am very, very highly concerned. I think I probably brought this up before about FMSs stopping services without any notice and at their discretion. Just today, I got an email from an FMS saying that there's an underpayment, I guess, by them for 2 years ago. And then it has to be rectified in like 10 days. And then I got another one for, they just said, you spent too much money, we're stopping services today. And that happens all the time.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm so gonna add that to the list. And really hope, Melissa, I know you're in Southern California, right? Yeah, I hope you can come to the conference because I need your voice there. The first issue raised, remind me, because the rate increases. That is when I lost it this week. I completely lost it because I heard, and maybe it was from you, but from somebody, that Harbor Regional Center is not giving anyone rate increases across the board, never. So that means you are at a great disadvantage if you are at Harbor Regional Center if you decide to go into the self-determination program. You are not being paid, you're not able to pay your staff the same that they're able to pay them in the traditional system. To me, that is completely illegal, and it is against the directive that went out about this back in a couple years ago. So, I mean, that is something that we have to fight back because what I've learned is that the regional centers talk to each other. And when some regional center hears some restriction from another regional center, they start to adopt it. It doesn't mean that all 21 regional centers do it all. I have to tell you, my regional center, West Side, is really great. I know not every IF thinks so, but as a parent, I love, love, love my regional center, and I have no complaints at all. But I know that there are other regional centers who are looking at they'll look at Harbor and go, look what Harbor did. We're going to do it the same way. It's the same thing with having to, like, if you have respite in the traditional system, you have to respite. That all started with Regional Center of Orange County. And now I've heard that Central Valley Regional Center is also doing it, and that a few others are doing it as well. So it's like they all talk to each other and they all try to find out how restrictive they can all be. So yeah, it's really problematic. Let's keep going with another. I'm working through the chat, but keep going with
Raji?
another.
Raji? Their hand went down.
Okay, so let's go to Sandra then.
Sandra went.
No, Raji's hand just went up. Go ahead, Raji. Where'd you go?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was too quick to
No worries.
lower my hand, so that's what happened. Well, I really appreciate what you guys are doing first. I think most of the problems arise because of disconnectedness in the process. One hand is not talking to the other hand, and that's where it falls through. That FMS sending notices, I have received those too. So it is really, really like, I was in India at the end of the year, and I'm like, oh my God, my daughter's services are going to stop tomorrow. What am I going to do? Then I call my husband and he runs to the regional center, bangs on their door and says, look, this is what is happening, you guys, because you have not signed on the spending plan and sent it over. How are we going to do this? So this is the kind of stuff, because the two hands are not talking to each other. They don't know where we are in the process. There is no timeline. So that's what the other thing is about, the IPPs are not being done well. Oh my God, this new template, and I have brought this up, Judy, last time also. The new template is great, but what the regional center is asking to do is, I don't think it's a good idea to do this. They're putting the funds for each of the services down to the cents into the body of the IPP. And now you tell me, when there is a revision to the budget or the spending plan, am I supposed to then go back and change the IPP, go through the approval of the IPP and then approval of the budget and spending plan? I mean, it's so tedious. I'm holding on to this IPP right now because I just don't know how I can sign this.
Mm,
Judy, isn't the budget supposed to be separate from the IPP? I mean, it's
Yes.
generated by the IPP, but it's not supposed to be the same thing.
Exactly. And I talked about this to the head of the boss of the SDP specialist, and she also is saying the same thing. No, no, no. At our regional center, we are going to do this way. And I'm like, no, there is no directive telling you to do this way. There's another form, which is the agreement forms, agreement and signature form, where you actually point out the services, the types of services, and all of that. And then you attach the budget. It's such a straightforward, clean process, but they are just complicating it and they're put down to the cents. And I don't know, how to handle this right now. So that's a big, big.
yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. These are really grave concerns.
Regional centers aren't supposed to make up their own rules.
Yeah, so I just want to say that these are health and safety issues. Somebody gets dropped by an FMS at a moment's notice, or the regional center doesn't sign the renewal. We are talking that people could die, because if that means their staff aren't getting paid, if I were the staff, I wouldn't show up for work because I know I'm not going to get paid. And then people die. And it's very funny because I've somebody from DDS said to me once, "Oh, I'm so worried about publicity that would get out about the self-determination program, because if publicity ever got out that people are abusing it, it could really kill the program." Totally agree. I have the same grave concerns. But what if somebody died because of a screw up and the lack of controls and processes? To me, that's a whole lot worse and not reversible, by the way. So yeah, it is health and safety for sure.
And the last one thing is that, this whole SDP system is now beginning to look more like traditional.
Mm.
And we have to stop this. We really have to.
That's their goal, Raji. That's the goal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that's their goal. It's not our goal.
Not our goal.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go through just real fast some good questions that were in the chat. People are saying, what about the challenges of hiring at IHSS wages? Very true. I mean, very, very hard to find people who are willing to take like minimum wage. But that is not an argument that you ever have been or can make with the regional center. My recommendation is that you try to use your IHSS for what we call a sleep hours. Of course, there are people who never sleep. So, geez, what do you do about that? Try to use those lower rates for the sleep hours. That's at least what I know I do, and I think Tina does that too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Take the next person, because that was one that I really wanted to comment. There's a few that were similar to that.
Sandra, you're next.
Thank you, and thank you for having this history and thorough discussion about what the concerns are and what to look for that are coming in the next months, really, and what we're already experiencing of things that aren't supposed to be happening yet. But I wanted to say that we all have a responsibility to know how to use the directives to help us maintain our plans and programs. And so I put a link to the directive from December 30th, 2022, that tells the regional centers what they are supposed to do to make sure we don't have gaps in services during our renewal. And I encourage everybody at the 60-day mark before stuff is supposed to be turned into the FMS to have a direct conversation with the regional center about, are we going to have this ready, or are we going to do an extension the way it's described in the directive? Because we can't keep having people lose services because the regional center has pushed that responsibility that's theirs off onto the participants. So let's use that principle of self-determination, that responsibility part, and make sure that we let the regional centers know, we know that this is a right that we have.
Yeah. Excellent point. And Sandra, I'll see you tomorrow. Sandra's one of our
Yep.
speakers tomorrow, everybody. Um, yeah, so somebody is asking about the turnaround time for background checks by DDS. And also they asked why a worker who works for another vendor is required. So I did raise that recently with DDS. They said that there's so many new people being hired through the SDP that they only had one guy working there, and he was overwhelmed, and obviously nobody realized this. I could have predicted it very easily. So they just are about to hire a new person. So they're anticipating that the wait for background checks will reduce soon. Of course, that doesn't help those of us who are hiring new people who now got different jobs because they're tired of waiting. Let me tell you the rules about who needs a new background check. So if an individual is working for a traditional service provider, for some reason that is unclear to me, when the rules were written back in 2014, 2015, DDS requires people to get a brand new background check that is exclusively just for the SDP. However, if you are hiring a person that works for another SDP client, even if it's a different FMS, they do not have to do a background check anymore. And I have heard this, that the new FMS is requiring them to go through the whole process again and have a 6-week wait. That is not true. All you need to do is tell the FMS this person is already had the background check, and they're working for this other FMS agency, and the new FMS, all they have to do is send a form up to DDS, and DDS looks on the computer, they see it's on their list, and it should be done. I can tell you, a year ago, I was able to get one of my son's staff approved in 24 hours because she was already working for 2 other FMSs. So back then it was working, but now it seems to be kind of out of control. All right, let's take another hand up.
I know part of the reason why it takes longer in the summer is because the company that does the background checks is also doing background checks for all the teachers and substitute teachers.
No, it's true, but that's not the reason why it's taken longer. It's because of DDS. It's not because of, so that the live scan company is actually fulfilling their responsibility, but it is DDS
is letting us down
Yeah,
as usual.
yeah. Okay, take the next hand, please.
Venny or Yenny?
Yeah, you're able to unmute. There, can you unmute, Yanni?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. So my question is regarding errors on the part of the service coordinator. So I have my son was never placed in the Latterman program. Apparently, he was placed as provisional services because service coordinator never updated the system. She went on leave, and after months, actually when his new IPP was coming up, I noticed and I reached out to the regional center, and they asked me for all of his medical information, and they asked me for just a lot of documents to even show that he had been diagnosed with autism. And now that we were transitioning to the self-determination program, they tell me that that due to their error, he was never placed in Latterman. So all of the reports and everything are outdated. They're too old, so they need me to resubmit paperwork to do new evaluations and basically go through an approval process just to get him into the Latterman program, and that is going to take months to do. So I will have to restart the process for self-determination once all of that is sorted out. But I don't know how we can address it since this was, an error on their end. I sent them all the information since May before I started with the trying to transition to self-determination, and now we're just kind of having months later. I was
Yeah.
just told this last Friday, and now they're telling me
Yeah.
everything was set to start in October, and now they're telling me, well, now you're going to have to start over after we review everything, after we they want to see if he's eligible even for services. That just kind
Oh
of
my
blew my
God.
mind. I had no idea, where this is all gonna go.
Yeah. So I've actually never heard that story before. So that's a new one, although nothing ever surprises me. Yeah, it sounds like you're having some eligibility issues. I would recommend you contact the Office of Clients' Rights Advocates at Disability Rights California. Sometimes they don't have time to help, but I think this is a pretty outrageous issue, and maybe they can show up at a meeting with you to try to move things. I mean, they can't start everything from scratch anymore. Like things have got to move more quickly since it was their fault. So I wish you a lot of luck. Sorry about that, Yanni.
Thank you.
Dominica, let's go next.
Hi, so I'm trying to be super brief because it's like there's so many things. I did just want to share that like my FMS and my regional center is not requiring me to put the names of my individual providers on my spending plan. So I don't know if that's something that's happening FMS by FMS or regional center by regional center, but yes, that is very troubling and would make staffing like completely impossible for me and for adults who live alone. And like so much of the messaging for SDP clients is around families, but that just makes it impossible if you rely on your staff to meet your day-to-day needs and like there is no family backup infrastructure. I do also want to say that I've had a lot of issues with my FMS. They've asked me to commit fraud multiple times. They've made purchases that I didn't authorize. And then when I complain to them, they threaten to take away vendors I'm using, and they've threatened to kick me off their services. Like basically they forced, well, they didn't force, but they strongly encouraged multiple times and failed to make timely purchases for me and really encouraged me to put my parents on as vendors just so they could make purchases for me. So then they did that, and then they refused to pay back my parents for the money that they spent. So these are just some things that have happened to me in my course of time in dealing with them. They overpaid my workers and they're asking them to pay it back out of pocket without like accounting for taxes or responding to questions about that. And my experience has been that, when I complain, it becomes, oh, you need to find, we may not be the right fit for you, or like, oh, you didn't authorize us to make that payment. We didn't bother following up on a refund, but if we don't automatically get a refund, then you can't use the vendor anymore because they committed fraud. So these are just some things that have happened to me. And I think that it's just really important for people to be aware. Like, I feel that these programs were really supposed to be a tool to help us. And instead, I feel like they've just become a tool for these companies to just make money off of us and really make the rules. Like, I went to hearing because my FMS, well, this wasn't the only reason, but one of the reasons was my FMS has a rule that they won't take businesses that require you to keep a credit card on file, but that's most of the advertising websites that you can use to like find people to do personal care. So, that's problematic as well. So just generally, I feel like I would really like to see more oversight on these companies, even though they're private companies, because they are stewards of public funds. And then the backlash shouldn't be on the participant, like it's like, I mean, I know technically it's not illegal because they're a private company, but retaliating against someone because they've complained when you've harmed them is really, really not
okay.
good, So
Yeah.
those are just some things that have happened. And also SDP is amazing. I'm becoming an independent facilitator and it's completely changed my life. I mean, the program itself is life-changing, but the FMS has been an extremely huge barrier
Yeah.
to,
So
getting services.
yeah, Dominica, thank you so much. I just private messaged you in the chat and gave you my contact information because I really want to hear more about this, and I'm sure Tina would want to too. So maybe we'll
Yeah,
set up a meeting with the
very
three of us.
troubling.
That is very concerning, and
It's
and
not okay.
I feel bad because we are 1 minute away from having we will lose our interpreters right now. It's at 6 o'clock, and I feel really bad that we didn't get to this all. So I promise we're going to have lots more of these conversations. I promise. This was a very popular topic, and I didn't do it for you guys. I did it for me because I needed to get all my frustration out. So thank you all for listening to us. Thank you, Tina, for co-hosting, and our great staff, Kaylee and Michaela, and our wonderful interpreters. And I'll see some of you tomorrow in person. Very excited, big day. We got to go to bed soon. All right, everybody, have a great week. Take care. Bye.